I think it would be a good thing that if there is some pressure from the outside, so that the results of the conference are salutary. And I think I'm serving the cause of the opposition by maintaining this pressure from the outside.
Mr. Bhutto, you have support, quite obviously, from a whole broad mass of people who are, as it were, anti-Ayoub and not necessarily pro-Bhutto yet. What is it that you offer them other than a negative policy? What do you want for this country?
No, I think it's the other way around. On the contrary, because I offer them a positive policy, that they follow me. At first, my support was underrated. Only the students and the young elements are with me. But now, the general masses of people are with me, and it is because my party believes in giving Pakistan not only democracy, but with democracy, economic justice as well. I want to end this system of Buffalo Bill capitalism and Jesse James capitalism. That doesn't mean I'm going to eliminate private enterprise altogether. But the kind of system that exists today in Pakistan has to be radically modified. It's not the law of God that my people alone should be poor. And it is about time that they also have a break. Like your people want better conditions, better living conditions, better facilities. I want to give my people the same thing. That is why my people are with me.
You spoke in rather scathing terms about some of the opposition or some of the old guard. Who, in fact, do you respect among those who sit around the round table?
Well, I respect them all and I don't respect them all either. It's an amalgam of both. They are obsolete.
All of them?
Most of them. But some of these gentlemen should realize that their watch stopped in 1958. Either they rewind it or they step aside.
What do you mean the watch stopped in 1958?
That means that events have passed. The world has changed. We are in an entirely new world today. The mood and the music of the people is different. Either they dance to that mood and music according to its tune, or they get off the floor.
But after years of a dictatorship and years also of enforced illiteracy, are the people politically educated enough to really know what they want?
That was a mistake that Ayub Khan made. That he thought the people are illiterate and ignorant, that they do not know what they want. But the people will send to the Constituent Assembly people, the leaders they trust. And they have that knack, that sixth sense or whatever you want to call it, to make a correct judgment, not in all cases, but in the majority of cases. And I think that our people have that knack, and all people have that knack. We haven't come down from the trees, now we have an old civilization. We are a civilization of 5,000 years. And these people are mature and mellow enough to know what they want.
Pakistan has not escaped the grinding poverty of the East. The wealth held by the few does not filter down to the shanty towns. The average income is £35 a year. Only 20% of the population can read and write. In East Pakistan, the problems of poverty, hunger and disease are even worse than they are in the West. And throughout the nation, the population increases at the rate of 3 million every year. For the children, there is a future without hope. For their parents, there is the fight for survival, and perhaps the thought that Mr. Bhutto or some other new leader could change it all. But meanwhile, there is a living to be scraped. Mr. Bhutto's elegant home in a Karachi suburb. The future of his children is assured. There is an armed guard on the gate and sandbags on the roof. Even the man of the people has his enemies. A would-be assassin was seized at one of his demonstrations. His opponents criticize him for being weak and inconsistent in his politics. In a deeply religious land, others attack him for not being a good Muslim in his private life. This is hardly the background of a militant social reformer.
Well, yes, in a way it isn't, because I've heard that criticism made quite frequently. But on the other hand, I think history bears out that many people from landowning families who espouse the cause of social justice have sacrificed their personal interests. You had that in the French Revolution, in the Russian Revolution, and in many other countries of the world. But I believe that the cause of a people, the cause of a country, is more important than personal vested interests.
You've heard this criticism. Quite frank, have you also heard criticism against you that you're something of a playboy yourself and an insubstantial figure?
Well, that was also said, but then I've been now about 10 to 11 years in public life, and wouldn't say I'm a playboy, or even if I was a playboy, it was some years ago. I've now not as young as I used to be. I'm over 40 now. I'm 41. So these things all pass away, but I don't think I was a playboy even in the past. I had a natural life. That's all there is to it.
But is having a modern outlook, being, if you like, sort of sophisticated and international in your approach, do you find that, in fact, something of a drawback as a politician in a country like this?
You see, in my country, the people are more interested in personal integrity and in the principles of a politician. And they are apt to overlook other weaknesses, and human beings do have weaknesses. But as I say, that whatever it is, that is a thing of the past.
Most of the people on this march, I hear they're shouting for Bhutto and for socialism. Are most of the people here supporters of Bhutto?
Yes, we support
Yes.
Bhutto on the
Yes,
principle that we want socialism. We think that socialism can only solve all problems of this country. So Bhutto, we support him because he also agrees on this point that socialism should be established here.
Can you have socialism and Islam?
Yes, because Islam is our religion, and we think that socialism is our economy, and we can go side by side.
But
And
not-
I don't think there is more difference between Islam and socialism.
You know what Mr. Bhutto says? He says our religion is Islam, our economics is socialism, and our political system is democracy. Now, I suppose any sensible person could see that all these three things could not coexist. If you want to have democracy like the secular democracy in Europe, you can have that. If you want to have the proletariat dictatorship as in China and Russia, you could have socialism. And if you want to have Islam, you must have Islam in toto, because Islam has its own economic system, its own political system, and its own religious traditions. And I suppose that if we are diverted from Islam in toto, then ultimately Pakistan may have to join India. I mean, if we deceive and go back from the words of establishing Islam as a system, as an economic, political, social, and cultural system, then there will be no justification of for the creation of Pakistan and ultimately join India.
Could Mr. Bhutto come to power?
There are very few chances about it, because the majority of the people think is that he's not serious enough and a good Muslim in his personal life also to become the president of Pakistan.
I think that in our country, the bond of Islam, being a uniting force between the left and the right, cannot be fully understood by the outside world. But our people here are rightly very much committed to the ideology of Islam. And Islam can be the golden bridge between the left and the right.
I mean, you, sir, talk of Islamic socialism. I've talked to young students, for instance, who say that there is no such animal, that you can't have such a beast, and that therefore, as they started this movement for Islam and the faiths of Islam, they reject your socialism as well.
Well, you must have talked to a section of the students. But there is another powerful section of the students which believes that Islam and socialism are compatible. I have never used the word Islamic socialism. What I have said is that there is no contradiction between the principles of Islam and those of modern socialism. And that if they were irreconcilable, then the controversy would become valid. But it is not valid because there is no conflict. And there are many Muslim countries which claim to have a socialist system. I'm not going into the merits of whether they are socialists or not, but they claim to be socialist countries.
What kind of a socialist are you, Mr. Bhutto?
Well, you see, as I said today in my public speech, in the public meeting, I made it quite clear, and I didn't have to make it quite clear at this juncture, but I think it's necessary that I spell out my position. I said in the public meeting today that I'm a socialist, I'm not a communist. Now, if some communists join in the march that took place today, that's a different matter, because I suppose they think that their road and mine converges to a point. Beyond that, there's a point of departure. But I would say that if you want to uh, talk in comparative terms, it's always difficult because you can't give exact analogies, but the Scandinavian form of socialism for Europe with Asian conditions, I would like to see that form of socialism in Pakistan.
You know him. I mean, you were once a minister in his government. I mean, did he start off a despot and corrupt, or has absolute power corrupted absolutely?
Both, but I think there were that he had these weaknesses in the beginning, but they were not detectable. Over the course of time, I think his appetite became insatiable.
But you served with him.
Yes, I did, and I was never a party to all these matters. I was industries minister, and I advised him against his son's enterprises, and I always tried to hold the reins. Of course, you can ask me why didn't I quit earlier. But you see, there was no alternative in Pakistan in those days, and the only thing I could do was from within try to effect some reforms and to bring about some changes. But in spite of that, it was as early as in 1961 that I had submitted my first resignation to him. And you know yourself, until this upsurge took place, that all you people used to say that Ayub is there for a millennium.
One of the things that must be in the back of your mind, surely, as you lead these huge demonstrations, as you see President Ayub tottering from power, is the way, in fact, though, that he, in fact, came to power. And is there a possibility of a military coup in this country?
Well, as far as the present crisis is concerned, I think we must compliment the armed forces for keeping out of the crisis and for allowing a political settlement of it. So I paid tributes to the armed forces in Rawalpindi for having taken the position in the highest interest of the country. But if the politicians fail, and if we have um, sort of a chaotic future, and if we are not able to overcome our difficulties, then I suppose these prospects might brighten. But for the moment, the armed
Or
forces,
prospects of a coup might,
for the
might
moment,
increase?
I don't think that there is that fear. And there was a time when it was feared that there will be a military intervention, but I think the armed forces and the leadership in the army realized that the consequences would be deleterious, and that is why they kept away. But it depends on future developments.
If the politicians fail,
If the politicians fail, then in politics there is no vacuum.